Hiya, pals! Welcome to the Mouse Bytes podcast! Here we go!
Hello and welcome to Mouse Bytes, the show all about Disney video games, past and present. I am your host Jeff, and I am joined as always by Clay. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing pretty darn good.
Awesome.
So, here we are for another episode, another Mickey game this week.
Yeah, in case we haven't had enough Mickey games recently. I think it's only been like one episode since we talked about a Mickey game. But there's just so many. We gotta.
There really are a lot of them, and we are Mouse Bytes, you know. So.
That's true.
It's acceptable. It's okay. I mean, I know it's supposed to be all Disney video games, but yeah, we chose this one, which we haven't named yet, but it is Mickey's Dangerous Chase. In part, I think, was just to be able to do a Game Boy game. Have we done another Game Boy game, or is this our first one?
We've done Game Boy Advance. I've got a.
Yeah, no, I don't have a list pulled up.
I do have the list. Yeah, no, this is our first GB game.
Genuine classic Game Boy. Yeah. Well,
yeah,
good. I'm excited to be covering one. We'll do, I'm sure, many more, but this is a good one to start with, I think.
Definitely.
So, yeah, without further ado, we kind of just jump into it. So, as mentioned before, it is Mickey's Dangerous Chase. Clay, you want to tell our listeners or viewers what the heck this game is?
Yes. So, it's very simple. This is a Mickey platformer. Pretty straightforward. Moving left to right for the most part. I guess the big key thing that kind of differentiates it is you throw boxes at enemies to attack. There's no jumping on enemies to hurt them, and so it's strictly a projectile throwing things to kill enemies. So it's very, very simple in nature, but I think it works real well for what it is. So that's about it as far as just like the overall, like getting an idea of what this is. So this game was developed by a company called Now Productions, who worked alongside Capcom to develop it. I'm not sure if Capcom distributed it or not. I forget. But Now Productions is the company. We were just looking at their repertoire, and it's an interesting. It's a Japanese studio. They've done a number of different games over the years, pretty much everything, a little bit of everything for almost every console. They did Game Boy, Game Boy Advance, Game Boy Color, Game Gear, GameCube, Mega Drive, DS. I don't know if Super Nintendo's on here. A lot of PlayStation. Yeah, there's Super Nintendo. But really, I couldn't find any other Disney games they've made. This seems to be like their only one. They did a little bit with Nintendo for like some Mario sports games, but yeah, for whatever reason, as far as I can tell, this is like one of the only Disney games they've ever made. So
yeah, it's interesting that they didn't do more, because this was a good port, or it wasn't really a port. No. I would say it's kind of like a port of Chip and Dale, if anything, but that's maybe the closest thing. But no, it's a good little independent game.
Yeah, no, I agree. This game was released in North America May 15th, 1991. In Europe sometime in 1992, a little bit later. It's interesting it doesn't mention Japan on here, so I'm not sure if we just didn't have a date or if it didn't actually come out there. But the fact that it was developed in Japan would make me think that it probably did. But
I do have that pulled up. It is December of 92. So
Okay. Yeah. So it came out the following year as well. Yeah, for whatever reason, Japan ended up getting more Mickey games on the Game Boy than pretty much anywhere else did. And that's something we'll cover here eventually, some more of those. But this one saw worldwide release, and yeah, it was strictly on the Game Boy and didn't release for any other console, so just a Game Boy version. I did see that there was some box art for this one where it had like a free promo code on it. Let's see, it it was if you bought the game and you mailed in this thing, you could get a free. It was like a fanny pack.
Oh boy.
Which is super like a product of its time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've got it right here. And then it also came with a free here, I got it. Okay, finally. Mickey Mouse Club Hip Pack, which I assume is a fanny pack, and $10 off the Disney Channel. See back of Game Pack for more details.
Wow.
Yeah.
Man.
So I thought that was kind of interesting. I came across that and I was like, oh, that's interesting. Also, this game was one of the first Game Boy games to be resold as the Nintendo Player's Choice after it sells, I don't remember how many, so many copies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They dropped the price. I think it was like $20 or something.
Yeah.
And so this was one of the first, I don't think it was the first, but definitely one of the earlier ones that got re-released with that little, it's pretty cool. They have like the gold Game Boy font with the little ribbon stamped on it. So there's some different variations of the game out there, but I just want that Mickey Mouse Club hip pack thing and $10.
Yeah, I wonder if anyone's selling any of those on eBay or anything.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't looked. That's a good question.
Yeah.
Yep. So I think that's about it as far as information goes with this game. There wasn't a whole lot of interesting behind the scenes or anything that I could find. So.
Yeah, I mean, and for a Game Boy game of that era from a studio like this, it's probably not going to have a whole lot of behind the scenes stuff. So that's pretty cool. Interesting how it all went down and that it's a one-off and all that. I guess we can just jump into our history with the game. I'll start us off. So, unfortunately, this is another one that I never played until now. So, I didn't get my first Game Boy until, man, it was probably like 99. So
Wow.
I went through the whole 90s without a Game Boy, and it was like if a kid brought one to school, I'd play it at recess or something if they let us or something like that, but just did not have one, and I missed out on a lot of good games that way, unfortunately. So
Yeah. Dude, I'm looking at the list of future games we have coming up, and I'm pretty sure almost none of these you had as a kid or have a lot of, I don't know. I just feel like we need to get some games in here that you have a little more nostalgia with maybe.
we can try. It's funny because like I've said, I just didn't play a lot of Disney video games for whatever reason. So I'm enjoying using the show as at least a stepping stone to get to play them.
Well, that's good at least.
Yeah. But yeah, we'll try and figure out a couple that I've at least had some experience with, and we'll work them in there.
Okay. I just feel like I'm like pulling all these things that I have some ties to and you have none. But I'm starting to realize, you just really haven't played a lot of these.
I just missed out.
Right.
Yep, I just missed out.
But you love Disney, and you love video games, so it's a good opportunity for you to get on these.
Yep.
So, all right.
And it lets me stay at least partially objective.
Totally. Yeah, that's true.
So, So what about you? How about your history with the game?
Yeah, I'm pretty similar to you. I never played this one when it was, available and a bit, a thing. I did have a Game Boy. I'm not sure exactly when I got mine, but this was just never a game we had, unfortunately, which is a bummer because I feel like I would have really enjoyed it as a kid. But the weird thing about this game is this was something I'd literally never heard about. And then it was after we started this show, I think I started hearing people telling me about it. And it was like I heard from 3 separate, completely different circles from different parts of the United States telling me about it. I know one of them was my coworker. One of them maybe was Dave. Somebody like that I know through like online was like, dude, if you need a good Game Boy game, you got to check out Mickey's Dangerous Chase. So it was just like nonstop. I kept hearing people saying like, you got to check this out. So I pretty much shortly after that, I was like, all right, I need to go buy this game. So I jumped on eBay and found a copy and bought it and immediately started playing it and really enjoyed it. And so it was a couple months after that me and my coworker decided we were going to start a Game Boy podcast. And so I think like episode 2, we covered it. And so So I've got a pretty good understanding of it now, and and really appreciate it. But yeah, my friend grew up with it and really loved it and talked really highly of it and stuff. So I know that it's near and dear to a lot of people, and pretty highly praised by a lot of people as well, people that I respect and stuff. So yeah, that's about it for my history with the game.
Well, good deal. It's fascinating to hear that so many people are familiar with it and hold it near and dear. So I'm glad we got to take a look at it. So with that, we will move on into our gameplay discussion. And under the gameplay discussion, as always, we will discuss the visuals, the audio, which includes the music and sound, as well as the actual physical gameplay itself and the difficulty that kind of goes along with that. Touch on the story, and then anything else about the game, discuss the levels, things like that. So we'll start off with the visuals. To kick it off, I think this is one of those where it's like they did pretty well with what they had, and considering it's a original Game Boy game and very early on in the life of that system, just 2 years after it came out.
Yeah.
I think it's an acceptably good-looking Game Boy game. There's not a whole lot to say about like anything wowing me or whatever. It's it's adequate backgrounds, adequate enemy types and stuff. I think they did decent with the Mickey model. In the cutscenes, the characters actually look really good. They got those large and properly proportioned. The gameplay characters, they're okay. I don't know, Mickey looks a little lanky. It's nitpicking really to say anything considering the resolution of the screen and all that, but yeah, overall it's not a bad looking game. I think they did well with it. What are your thoughts on the visuals of this game?
Yeah, I'm with you. They kind of went for a more simplistic route, which with the Game Boy, less is more, or
very often
a little goes a long way. In some of the later levels, there's like these caves, or I don't know what they are, but you're like underground or whatever, and so there's a lot more patterns and dark backgrounds behind it, and it gets a lot more difficult to see Mickey. But definitely in the earlier levels and more of like the outdoor stuff, it's a lot clearer what you're looking at, and so yeah, I think they did a good job with it. I think the simplicity is what makes me like it so much, is that they didn't try to do too much, because there are some Game Boy games that's just there's too much going on, and especially on the OG Game Boy, it's really difficult to see what's going on. And so I think they did a good job. I don't really have any issues with Mickey's sprite. I can maybe see that he's a little extra lanky, but overall it looks good. I agree the cutscenes look really good in this as well. I think they did a really good job with those for a Game Boy game. So and then last thing is I really like the Weasel enemies in this game. The sprites for those look really good. And I just love it when the weasels show up as enemies in Mickey games. So they make good enemies. And I liked it when they showed up in Conker's Bad Fur Day as well.
Yes, I agree. It was interesting. I have no idea if that was a Disney nod or not, but it was hilarious.
I don't know. It just works so well. They just look like mobsters. So.
Yeah, they really do.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, it's just there's not a whole heck of a lot to go into with Game Boy visuals. So one thing to note is that the game did support the Super Game Boy. I don't know that it had colors for it, but it does look a little sharper on a TV. Just with the refresh rate not ghosting, I guess. You don't have that kind of blur effect you get on the original Game Boy screen.
Right.
So, it looks a little crisper, and that's not always an option with any Game Boy game, but yeah.
That's
so, true. We'll move on into the audio, the music and the sound effects. I really don't have any problem with the music of this game. I thought it was cool that it had a lot of unique tracks. It wasn't just the same track for each, action level or whatever.
Yeah.
Nothing really stood out to me. There's like samples that sound like they're from like classical music and stuff here and there, but
definitely.
It's an adequate soundtrack. I didn't find it to be annoying or repetitive or anything. What are your thoughts on the music?
You keep saying the word adequate.
I do. I'm sorry.
Have you ever seen Rockadoodle?
No.
Oh, there's a part where he's like, adequate pipe, and it just makes me think of that. You should see that movie. It's a good movie.
Okay.
Are you not a big Don Bluth fan?
No, I like him. I've seen some of his stuff.
Just not all of it, huh?
Just not all of it. No.
You should have seen all of it because it's top quality. But
yeah,
I digress. I think the music's good in this. It's relatively catchy. Like you said, I appreciate that they didn't. As far as I can tell, every level has its own unique song.
Yeah.
And with some Game Boy games, you get repeats and some of it feels like they kind of just like phoned it in with, them kind of referencing these classical songs, but really for like older games they did that a lot, and it wasn't until later on that they kind of shied away and they're like, all right, we just need to really work on making our own unique stuff. So maybe this was kind of bridging on that time where it was still like acceptable and not a big deal. So for me, being more new to this game, a lot of it really hasn't like sunk in, other than maybe the main theme song and the first level. I could remember relatively well, but my friend who I mentioned played this a ton as a kid has like the whole thing memorized. So if I play a level, he could literally whistle along the entire thing. So I want to say that that's a good sign. I feel like that means that it's stuck with him all these years, and so I feel like if you played this enough, you would know it really well, and it really doesn't get annoying to me, which some Game Boy music can be a little more obnoxious at times, I would say. But so I don't have any issues with the music in this. I appreciate the lengths they went to keep it original each level. So unfortunately the Game Boy can only be so diverse in its music, so I don't know if every song is necessarily reflective of what's happening in the level, but I mean there's only so much dynamics you can get with the console. So so that's kind of what I would say with the audio. So
yep, I think that sums it up pretty well as far as the music goes. As far as the sound design, again, as a Game Boy game, it doesn't have a whole lot of breadth to it or depth to it. So they did the best they could with what they had, which is what you'd probably say for a lot of Game Boy games and their sound design. So I really don't have any commentary on it. It worked. It wasn't, again, super obnoxious. I can't think of any sounds that were overused or underused or whatever. I don't know. Was there any that you did?
No, I didn't have any issues. Yeah.
Yep. Just your classic 8-bit beeps and bloops coming out of a single mono speaker.
Yeah.
So, it works. It works for what it needs to do, and it does the job without getting in your way. So I think that's a win. Next, we'll jump into the gameplay and talk about the difficulty that comes along with that. Do you want to go ahead and start this one off?
Yeah. So as Jeff mentioned earlier, if you've ever played Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers for the NES, which we covered a couple episodes ago, basically this game is very, very familiar, very similar to that. Basically, it's a side-scrolling platformer where you take out enemies by picking up and throwing boxes at them, like I said earlier. You can play as either Mickey or Minnie, so you get to choose at the beginning. They play identical. There really isn't a difference between the two. And the goal is to reach Goofy at the end of the stage. And we'll explain Goofy's role in this whole thing once we hit the story next. But basically, once you get to the end of the level, you move on to the next one. There are different types of levels, I guess. It's not all just left to right. So I think they did a pretty good job, breaking up the gameplay so it doesn't become too monotonous. There's different parts where you're going upwards as it scrolls auto scrolls upwards, and then there's times where you're auto scrolling downwards or left and right. I think there's one part where you're falling downward, and there's these vultures that you ride that look really similar to the vultures from Jungle Book, which is kind of random. And then there's like a boat level where you ride a boat and jump around and stuff. So they did a really good job trying to break it up, the gameplay, without, having to make it too difficult on themselves to, make new things all together. But throughout the level, there's different collectibles you can get. There's these like weird sphere looking things. I think they look like like fortune telling, like crystal balls or something.
Oh,
I
yeah.
don't know what they're supposed to be, but there's 4 in each level, and if you collect all of them, you get an extra life, I believe. So
Okay. Yeah,
there
I'm
are
not sure.
those, and then there are black with white squares around them, stars. There are these black stars with white, and you collect those, and they give you points. And then there's also black ones. I honestly don't remember what all the things do, but there's collectibles throughout. And I think if you get enough of the stars, you get what is it? I don't know. You get an extra life or something. It's something like that. But then there's also hearts that you can collect to regain health. I think you start out with 3 hearts, and then you can go all the way down to 1, obviously. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Those are hit points and. Yep.
So the collectibles are there. They're just really simple. At this point, like, they knew that collectibles were a cool thing, but weren't totally, the most well integrated into the game at this point.
Yeah.
And then if you die at any point, you have so many lives, and then if I remember correctly, if you die, you start at the first part of whatever area you're on, so you don't have to start the game completely over, but you start at the first stage of whatever area you're in. And so I think you have unlimited continues, if I
believe so. Yep. Yeah.
And so that's nice. I mean, it's a little pain to have to go backwards even a little bit, but it's better than having to start completely over. So
yeah,
it could be much worse. So
definitely. Couple things that I noticed as far as gameplay goes. Mickey doesn't have momentum, so like if you're jumping forward and you stop holding the directional pad mid-jump, he'll just kind of stop mid-air. Not the end of the world. It's just something I noticed. Pretty much most of these games you kind of hold the directional button anyway, and you can still adjust in mid-air, so it's really not that bad. It's just interesting to see after, if you're used to Mario. I honestly can't remember if Super Mario Land had that or not, or if it had the same momentum as the console version, but an interesting thing for a platformer to not have momentum.
Yeah.
It's handled well enough. It works. The other thing I thought was interesting is, like, when you're scrolling one direction, you can go so far, and then if you stop and try to go backwards, it's got like certain points that it locks. So like the original Mario, again, like you could never go left after you went right. In this one, there's some sections where it's like you can go left a little bit and it will scroll back, but like it locks to a certain point. So it's almost like it's a checkpoint in a weird way.
I noticed that today too. I was like, it's weird that they give you a little bit extra, but it's kind of nice if you accidentally walk past something and you need to like come back around. It gives you a little bit of room to turn around before it cuts you off, which is nice.
Yep. And those are my main points as far as gameplay. Like the rest of it, I think it works well. It handles well. Mickey jumps a good height.
Yeah, I feel like he jumps the same as he does in like every other Mickey game for the most part. So it feels like it's a continuation of other Mickey games, just because he kind of, for the most part, jumps and relatively handles the same way that he normally does, which I appreciate.
Definitely. And there's varying enemy types for each level, and I think there's like most of them are unique to each level, which I thought was great.
Yeah.
Definitely not common in this era on the Game Boy that I am aware of. I feel like it was so common to just recycle things because of storage limitations or time limitations. Who knows? But there's different enemies and different attack patterns to learn, and like some things where you have to hit them a couple times, and it's well done.
Yeah.
Anything else gameplay related as far as the controls or anything that you wanted to comment on?
I think that's it. So
okay,
it's pretty simple.
Yeah, it is very. I mean, it is simplistic. There's 2 buttons on the Game Boy, so it's you've got a jump button and you've got an action button. The action button will pick up a block off the ground or from the air in some cases, and then the same button again will throw it in the direction you're facing. It doesn't have any sort of. It has just a set velocity. It doesn't like. It'll just go from where you throw it all the way to the right side of the screen or left side of the screen. So you don't have to worry about fall off. From here, I think we'll jump into the story. I guess I can handle this one.
Yeah, go for it. Let's
so
hear.
Straight
how
off the
good
back
this
of the
is.
box. Yeah.
All right.
So this compelling Mickey story, just like so many of the Mickey games before it.
Right.
Here we go. Big Bad Pete has swiped Minnie's birthday present and spoiled Mickey's surprise. Oh my gosh. So Mickey's out to get Minnie's present back and chases Pete through some dangerous places. In this awesome adventure, you play as Mickey Mouse. Enjoy the wonderful world of Disney as you follow Big Bad Pete through towns, woods, rooftops, mountains, and factories. Help Mickey throw boxes at bad guys while grabbing stars and prizes. Ride the speedboat. How do you say this word? Is it jalopy?
Yeah, I don't know
An
why.
old car. And a bouquet of balloons to get those presents back. Or get that present back. Sorry. Better hurry. So yeah, that's a compelling write-up for what this game actually is.
Yeah,
It's
jalopy.
classic.
Yeah.
Yep.
Um,
It does a good job of explaining what you're doing and why, I guess.
Yeah, couple things I want to point out here with this story. So basically, at the end of every level, Goofy's standing there, and he tells you which way Pete went, and so you continue to chase Pete. And it just doesn't make any sense. It's like, A,
No.
how do you get to the end of the level before me? And B, why do you keep letting Pete get away? Like, stop him. Try something. Quit just standing there and telling me which way to go. And so that always kind of was like, oh, that's kind of weird.
It is odd. Like, why even have him there? Why not just why not just not have somebody there? And then
Right.
have
It
him in
just
the
it
cutscene?
feels kind of forced, but
Yep.
whatever.
Yep.
And then the other thing, which I'm gonna throw a big spoiler out on this game.
Uh-oh.
So basically, you're chasing down Mickey's gift to give to Minnie, and so at the very end of the game, you find out what exactly is in the box, and it's really underwhelming, I must say. It's. Are you ready for this?
Uh-huh.
It's a little bird.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It is.
because in this universe, world, whatever, mice with like who walk on 2 feet give each other pet birds as gifts.
Totally.
Even
Why
though
wouldn't
birds
they?
eat mice, and yeah, so it's really
Yeah.
weird. And like Pete's been running around with this bird in a package the whole time.
It's almost as weird as Mickey having a dog.
Right, it's right up there with all that. So, yeah, just a tad underwhelming, and I think Minnie like even makes some quip at the end, like, "Oh, well, you're free now, little birdie," and it's just like, what is going on? That was a terrible gift.
Yeah.
And it just kind of anticlimactic.
It was a odd thing to have in there, to have it be a living bird.
right.
Go figure.
I don't know. The whole title of the game is based around this dangerous chase, and so I guess
Yeah.
it kind of works because you are chasing him, but it never really feels like it because you really don't see Pete until the very end, and it's just like, okay, I guess we were chasing him, but at no point did I ever really feel like I was even close to getting him, other than Goofy like cluing me in that he went another way. I'm just like, okay.
Yeah.
So I get it, like they needed a plot or whatever, and so it gives you some kind of reason for following him into these really random and weird locations, but I don't know. It felt very simplistic, but most video game plots were, especially Mickey games. So
Yep. 90s
actually-
side scrollers were very similar in that regard.
Right.
So, we're nitpicking because we have this hindsight of modern game design and storytelling to critique it, but yeah, it was par for the course for the era.
yeah, definitely.
Speaking of those weird and wacky levels, there were 5 of areas that Mickey's Dangerous Chase took him through.
Right.
As sort of alluded to in that description there. Real quick, they are so there's 5 areas, each one having 3 levels, and with the exception of that being the 5th area. And then of those 3 levels, the first 2 are usually platformers, and the third one is usually a auto scroller in a vehicle.
Right.
So the 5 areas: Mickey's hometown, the woods, the mountain, the industrial area, and the business district. Because what a thrilling end!
Yeah, it's a
to our
good way
chase.
to end it. Definitely.
Yeah, did you want to?
I guess the
discuss
only thing,
anything in
and
there?
honestly, I kind of forgot to hit on this when we were talking about gameplay, is the difficulty, which kind of goes alongside that. But it's just thinking back on these levels, it does start out pretty easy.
Yeah.
In fact, I kind of stockpiled quite a few lives in the first bit. But once you get further into the game, it does become a bit more challenging, but really never frustratingly hard or like overly challenging.
Yeah.
I mean, I did game over eventually and had to, or like lost all my lives or whatever towards the end. So it definitely ramps up a little bit. But honestly, if you play through it like once, your second time through, you'll just breeze right through it. Like my buddy can beat it in like less than 30 minutes. It's really a simple game once you kind of get the hang of it. It's fun and challenging on a first playthrough, though. I think like it plays really well, having not played it before. And if you're decent at platformers, you could get through it your first time pretty easily.
Definitely, yeah.
I would
just have some patience and learn the enemy patterns, and you'll be fine. I think if you just try to whiz through it like really fast, you might mess up, because I definitely did that. But once I kind of slowed down and just was like, okay, let me see what this guy's gonna do, then it was no problem.
Right. So it's on the easier side of the spectrum as far as Mickey games go, I would say, which is perfect for the Game Boy, because I'm sure it was mostly kids playing this, and this might have been some people's first Mickey platformer. So I would say that it's it's a good one. I think it's like the perfect level. It's perfect for very casual play. If you're just sitting around and you whip out your Game Boy and you're just gonna play through something, you could easily beat this in one sitting, and easily and enjoy it. So as far as the levels go, nothing really stands out. They're relatively similar throughout. There are certain parts of levels where it looks like there's a pit, and then you maybe eventually fall down, and then you realize it's not really a pit, but there's a bunch of collectibles down there. And so there's different things like that where it's a little less cut and dry than like Mega Man, where there's just pits, and if you fall in them, you die. And so they tried some different things there. Like I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of like the vehicle levels or the auto-scroller levels where there is some unique moments. Then there's also a few bosses, but nothing overly like. Wait, are there bosses? Maybe I'm confused with someone else. I can't remember, but there's definitely Pete at the end. I remember him, and he's not terribly hard either. But it wasn't until I got to the industrial levels that I started having a little more issues with them. So, but really, it's a fun, easy playthrough of the game to get to the end. So, not a lot to say with the levels. I mean, we could go through them more in depth, but I honestly feel like it would bore you, the listener. So we're not going to do that to you.
Yeah, I'd say visually, each one is definitely unique, which I would credit them on that. Like the cityscape looks so much different than like Mickey's little hometown, and then obviously the forests. As you mentioned, some of the kind of underground backgrounds are really dark and make it, especially on an original Game Boy, harder to see. A few things here and there like that, but in general, like there's good texture work on the backgrounds where like if you're in a house that's falling apart, you can see kind of the plaster and then the brickwork and then the background. So it's like multi-textured just to kind of give it some variety, which I think looks good.
Yeah.
Not too much else with that and or the levels. So I guess that brings us to our final thoughts already, which is incredible.
Yeah.
I'll start off with mine real quick here. So this is a fun little Game Boy game, not anything super in-depth or super crazy complicated, but it is a very good and, dare I say, adequate Mickey platformer. I really enjoyed it. I was pleasantly surprised, and I feel like I've said that for a lot of the games we've covered, but it's at least a good thing to be able to say that, because so many licensed games are known for just being shoddy and forced and rushed out, and I feel like most of the licensed Disney games we've covered so far have been pretty good, and this one, for being an earlier one and being the first kind of handheld one, or one of the earlier handheld ones. Definitely not the first one, but it is a fun platformer game. I would have probably really enjoyed having this as a kid, especially for like a car trip or anything like that.
Definitely.
So, in today's era of gaming, it might be a little harder for everybody to go back to. But if you're a fan of old 2D platformers, I'd say it's definitely worth checking out and playing through at least once.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'd recommend it. How about you?
Yeah, I think this game definitely lived up to the hype that multiple people were throwing at me. And I mean, as far as, Mickey platformers go, it doesn't offer like the most variety or whatever, but I mean, for the console itself and what it is, I think it does the job like wonderfully. And so I'm with you. I was a little bit surprised at how good it was, and as I mentioned earlier, it's simple and it works. The simplicity totally works for it, and so it knows what it is, it knows what it's about, and it sticks to it. I didn't get overly bored with it, really. I mean, at times maybe it's a little slow paced, but really not to a high degree at all. And so I was never like, ugh, when is this going to be over? It felt like it was the perfect length of a game. And I enjoyed my time with it. And I felt like I was in control the entire time and wasn't like getting, cheap hits on myself. The enemy attacks were fair and not like too quick or like hard to maneuver around. It didn't feel cheap at all. So if you love Mickey games or just platformers for the Game Boy, definitely check this one out. It's more on the relatively cheap side, and so I think it's a good one to have in your collection. It's definitely at least worth a good playthrough, even if just in a single sitting. Play until you're either you beat it or you're done with it, and I think you'll have a good time. So this one's a great one. So
Totally. Alrighty. Well, with that, we will conclude our episode. So thank you everybody so much for joining us this episode. And if you haven't already, please give us a follow over on Twitter to keep up with the latest news and other just Disney video game info that we post from time to time. That is at mouse_bytes, bytes being BYTES. Also, you can go to www.thenintendovillage.com. And from there, you can find links to all of our episodes, as well as the other great shows, reviews, and just additional content. Our episodes are also on the Nintendo Village YouTube, so if you'd like to see gameplay along with each episode, if you're listening to this audio only, check those out as well. So thanks again, and join us next episode as we cover Donald Duck's Going Quackers. With that, have a great day, everybody. there he is.
There he is. See you guys.
And don't forget, if you are giving someone a bird as a present, just keep an eye on it.
Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe, check out some of our other videos, and visit thenintendovillage.com, your home for everything Nintendo.